A plea for sanity. My name is Eric Ost. I was not happy with Donald Trump. I also assumed he couldn't win. Over time, media concerned me. Trump was not Reagan, but media behaved as arrogantly toward him as they did toward Reagan. Until 1981, Reagan was shot by John Hinckley Jr. This shocked the nation. Media calmed down and we thrived, survived. Depending on what party you ask, late 2015, I posted a comment to warn Trump could win. Today, I have a new warning that I hope will be heard. I have no reason to believe they will. I do not have or want a following, but I value the Constitution, and it sickens me the last 3 decades. I could stay silent. This hardly affects me at age 50, disabled, as well as gay and conservative. I have only one dog in this fight, this country and the Constitution. I want both to outlive me. For the citizens to once again deserve the protections our men and women in military fight and die for. I believe listening to both sides' views is the answer. If, as a society, we choose a path I disagree with, that is what the Constitution protects. Everyone should vote who is a citizen. If they are registered, then do a citizen's responsibility. This was posted November the 17th, 2015. I've been focusing on ISIS recently, a lot, but something else keeps popping up in my head about the election coming up. I hear all of the talk about how crazy and out there that Trump is, and I remember Ronald Reagan also being said to be unelectable. If he ran against someone other than the most failed president I've ever been alive to see, President Jimmy Carter, in case you can't remember. So, look at both the Republican and Democratic candidates and tell me if you believe any of them have any chance of energizing the base. I don't see one. Hillary might be the closest, but after President Obama, are we really likely to be willing to try the first woman president? I'm not belittling her as a woman. I'm just asking, with the last 7 years under the first black president, do you think we're likely to go down the same route? One thing that helped Obama win was the last president was Bush 43. Hillary doesn't have that. However, Trump, on the other hand, does. That scares me very much, probably as much as Reagan scared those in the 80s. I pray if this happens, Trump will be at least as good as Reagan. But the best alternative is to run a viable candidate, and that I haven't seen yet. Think about that before you assume Trump is just too crazy to get elected. Now that I've said that, we're going to go off into what I consider now as the new threat. Reid, Democrats trigger nuclear option, eliminate most filibusters on nominees. Harry Reid implemented the nuclear option for judges, excluding Supreme Court. They still could not seat Supreme Court without a filibuster being used. Now, April 6, 2016, Mitch McConnell implemented the nuclear option for the Supreme Court. Now the filibuster is gone all across the board for nominees. 2018, 4 judges believe in a living document. 2 is near retirement. 1 judge is the swing vote, also near retirement. 4 claim to believe in settled law. They rule on new cases by the Constitution, but will acknowledge the decisions in the past that are not constitutional, leading to schizophrenia in decisions. This has protected 8 decades of liberal wins we assume to be rights. 2 living document supporters are near retirement. 1 judge is the swing vote, also near retirement. If the Senate and President is Republican, you could see constitutionalist judges that replace these 3. Those are ones that believe if it is not in the Constitution, it can be overturned. Only amendments can change the Constitution. If all 3 leave, this will be like Franklin Roosevelt seating 7 Supreme Court judges. Except, instead, this court could undo 8 decades of exceptions, bringing back the Constitution as law of the land. Some are for this. Some would not like this at all. Berkeley riots. Just finding out President Obama's executive orders was about to go poof, the educated children threw a tantrum, attacking free speech. They are not the only ones. Had media pointed out in a democracy until the votes are cast, anyone could win, maybe turnout in 2016 would have been higher. 60% of registered voters went to the polls. Do you believe many of the 40% that could vote was Trump voters? I do not. Two candidates sucked. One was already declared the winner before one vote was cast. Ask analysts. Every election but 2016, we were told to keep voters motivated. Any chance some might assume since Hillary already won, why bother? So, just how many decisions of these two Chief Justices could go poof overnight? How high a price are you willing to pay for the greater good? Are you so sure the Red Scare is the only reason Trump won that you will gamble with long-term Democratic minority status? 1932, the map for the House seats, all blue. 1994 House seats, look at all that red. This is a map of all of the actual districts that voted Republican. All of these people fell for propaganda when the overwhelming message in 2016 was Trump couldn't win? Really? How much must the Democratic base destroy of 8 decades just to allow elites in Washington to try and undo a constitutional election? Just how much? Well, you willing to lose? You are that sure, even though over a year there is more evidence of bad behavior between Washington and media, FBI, and that was aimed against Trump. Point to the solid piece of evidence that proves beyond a doubt that the Red Scare is real. Mainstream media, 2015, insisted Trump couldn't win. He'd be annihilated about scandals they knew already about. Told you all of 2016 Trump couldn't get through Republican primaries. Every state when they said he wouldn't be president, insisted never get nomination, laughed at Trump for attempting to get states that he did carry. These are the vanguard of the Red Scare. Their integrity was thrown out the window, insisting we do not have a democracy. The vote was a formality. You still have confidence when everything they mention is innuendo called unnamed sources? After all of the times they insisted they knew what was going on, and they didn't actually know anything? Isn't that actually the definition of fake news, to say that something's going to happen and it doesn't? These people also told you in a country split down the middle for 3 decades, who also followed the same map of the last 6 presidential elections, insisting only a few states were swing states, that Trump couldn't win. In fact, gave statistics of over 90% on day of election, ignoring the polls that showed margin of error just the night before. Who insists that social media must be policed? The small reach of YouTube, Facebook, that they themselves use to get their points across, along with all of the other access they already had, where they were insisting she couldn't lose, that swayed the election. We hear no defense of free speech, a First Amendment right, by the way, that helped 8 decades of progress I thought liberals actually liked. Have you heard them use the word free speech since 2016? They yelled freedom of the press while advocating massive violations of citizens' free speech by tech giants. Just a reminder, freedom of speech actually goes further than freedom of the press. They have your full trust. You will risk all of 8 decades for what they insist is for the greater good? You would risk everything for 2 years of Trump's term? 2020, there is another election. If they embrace the liberal rank and file again, show humility, at least prove they haven't abandoned the LGBTQ, the women, and the minorities, and they would stop embracing criminals. It is they who are today yelling women they must be ashamed of their bodies. When I was young, if a conservative said that, they would get angry, call it blaming the victim. These are who you will blindly trust with 8 decades? Berkeley riots, protest in Washington. Antifa, who today wear masks like terrorists. Who are they afraid of, by the way? Couldn't be ridiculed from the peers, right? They were fine showing their face at first. How much closer to a civil war will they drag us? California acts like it's ready to leave the Union. 2018 is turning away from Democrats already, yet those in Washington media are desperate to protect what appears to be wrongdoing by the FBI. We are told in a country that is free we cannot question government even with all this going on. Reporters in 1960s made government accountable. 2018, they are insisting nothing to be seen, but they have done nothing to prove it. Is there one reporter that can show you solid proof that Nothing's happening, or that even Trump did collude? All I've heard is innuendo, claims unnamed sources. Knows this. How many times did those work? They act like fortune tellers announcing someone is leaving, then repeat it till they do. And they point to that as proof of their integrity. Over the next 3 decades, the Supreme Court will be radically different. It all depends on 3 things. One party's control over the presidency, the Senate, at the time the Supreme Court judge leaves. You're willing to gamble so much for 2 years. At this rate, you will still have Trump till 2024. The Democratic Party will be demolished. You could certainly blame those in Washington, but this is a free society. You have free will.